Hey there, it's Tom Ryan, founder and executive chairman of ICR. Before we get into the next episode, I wanted to ask that you subscribe to the show. It'll help us get even more unique and interesting guests on the podcast, and in turn, continue to educate management teams and the growing ecosystem that creates value for fast-growing private and public companies. And while you're at it, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating. Very much appreciated.
What we're selling is prescription medicine that gets sent to people's houses where they, with some of them, inject themselves at home. That requires a lot of trust building with the consumer for them to come to that purchase decision with you as a brand.
The health and wellness space is crowded, with a lot of companies selling products that they say will keep you healthier and more active into old age. To differentiate themselves and build trust with consumers, one company has organized an entire sporting event, the Enhanced Games, where athletes are proving that the protocols work to their consumers.
Athletes being the testimonials of what we're doing is safe and works. Hey, this helped the 35-year-old Cody Miller, who was a 2-time Olympic champion when he was in his prime, beat his personal best at 35, and he's feeling healthier and better than he ever has.
My name is Tom Ryan, and this is Welcome to the Arena, the ICR podcast. Each week, I sit down with today's business leaders to give you an inside scoop on some of America's most prosperous public companies, their origins, their challenges, and the keys to their success. Today's guest is Max Martin, the co-founder and CEO of Enhanced, an elite sports competition and performance products company that trades on the New York Stock Exchange under the symbol ENHA. With a unique background spanning technology, investment banking at Morgan Stanley, and entrepreneurial leadership, Max brings a distinctive perspective on building and scaling disruptive businesses at the intersection of technology, finance, and emerging markets. Let's enter the arena with Max Martin. So listen, for those who are not familiar with the company, what is Enhanced? What did you see in the marketplace that wasn't being addressed? What happened where you and your partners are just like, we're going for this. We're going to make it happen?
Yeah, amazing opportunity to explain it. Enhanced is here to give people the opportunity to live enhanced. And what do I mean by that? I mean by that, people know that aging is inevitable, but feeling worse at this stage in time where we are in society isn't actually anymore. So people are very, very curious about what they can do in their own healthcare and preventative medicine to get the best out of their physiology and health, to enjoy life at its full potential. And we're providing people pathways to do that. So the biggest section of our business is actually that we have a consumer business that offers to people prescription drugs, whether in the spaces of hormone therapies, longevity, wellness, etc., but then also supplements. And we make those enhancements safely accessible to people through telehealth. But that's not how we started, and that's not the only business that we run. We also run a sports league called the Enhanced Games, where athletes are able to utilize performance-enhancing drugs under clinical and medical supervision. And that's coming back to the other part of your question, how we started the business roughly 3 years ago. If you look at traditional sports, you know that there's anti-doping regulations in basically every sport there is.
Yep.
That includes a list of banned substances. In Olympic sports, there's roughly 4,000 substances that athletes cannot take. If you do research, though, when you dig deeper, you find that 43% of Olympians actually admit to using banned substances, but only 1% of those is getting caught. And what that means is that basically every other athlete is cheating, and they're getting away with it. So you ask yourself, with all the testing that's happening, how is that possible? It's possible because athletes are resorting to newly developed drugs that are not well researched, and they take additional drugs, masking agents, on top of it to hide what they're taking in the first place. That lets them circumvent the testing, but the price they pay for is with their health. And so our approach was initially to say, let's not be naive and pretend it's not happening. Let's take what's happening in the shadows, put it out in the open, put the right clinical and medical supervisory framework in place to make sure that the people that choose to do it, so it's not forced, it's choose to do it, that they can do it safely. Because we're for regulation. Prohibition never prevents anything from happening. And if you look at, Hollywood, you look at Marvel superheroes, they're all enhanced.
Yeah.
If you look at executives around the world, they're openly enhanced.
You're just being honest about it.
We're just being honest about it, and we're making it safe. So that's how the business started. And in the process of developing that, it came to life in May for the first Enhanced Games in Las Vegas, where we had 36 enhanced athletes, and we saw 21 personal bests. The athletes were healthier at the games than they've ever been, particularly before they started their protocols. And with the athletes that set these 21 personal bests, the average age of that athlete was 30.
Pretty incredible.
For an athlete to set a personal best at 30 is insane.
Yeah.
7 years past, they set their previous personal best on average. And so what we've proven is that safe enhancement works and makes people not just perform better, but also healthier. And this is why we started that consumer business to take it beyond the arena. Because enhancements are not just relevant for athletes, they're relevant for anyone.
Totally. And I think that the games got a huge amount of publicity globally, and that's amazing for the company. But I'm not sure people understand how the two exactly fit together. When people ask you, how do the two fit together? How does that create a flywheel in the business? How would you answer that?
Yeah. It's not as obvious at first.
Right.
But where it comes from is all the learnings that we have from enhancing athletes at the forefront of human performance. Think about it maybe like this. When you look at Formula One and the engineers in a Formula One team develop the Formula One car, that's at the forefront of scientific innovation and technology.
Yep.
That Formula One car is never going to get mass produced. But what they learn in developing that Formula One car, in some form of a derivative, improves the road car a few years down the line. So, for example, shifting paddles come from motor racing. Anti-blockage system comes from motor racing.
Yeah.
That's how the frontier of science improves everyday lives. And it's very similar for us. The work that we do with athletes is really at the forefront. But what helps an athlete when we design a personalized protocol for them helps them break a world record. We broke a few world records since we started. Set 21 personal bests. That protocol is way too complicated for an average Joe like myself. But the work we do with athletes helps us understand better personalization of protocols. Because that's what it's all about. When you think about enhancements, people always tell me, which peptides should I be taking? Which enhancements should I be taking?
Yeah.
That's not the right question to ask. The right question to answer is, what am I trying to achieve? And putting that into perspective to the baseline where you're currently at. And that's exactly the approach that we have with athletes. Before an athlete even signs with us, we do their first medical screenings. We really understand them and their biology and physiology. This ranges from all the different biomarkers you can think of, blood, urine, saliva, cardiac imaging, brain imaging, other organ imaging, musculoskeletal analysis, to really understand the physiology of the athlete that we're dealing this. Then a second layer is, which event is that athlete doing? And as you can imagine, running the 100 meters requires a very different skill set than running the marathon. Therefore, two very different enhancement protocols to help the athlete excel at each. So based on who you are as an individual and what your specific goals are, that informs the protocol making. And this knowledge that we generate, we now make accessible to our consumers. Because if you're 25 training for your marathon, you're going to be on a different protocol than if you're 65 looking for more energy to take your grandkids to the playground and play with them.
100%.
And so that's really the translation, how these two businesses are connected. And the second thing is, in a business where we're not just selling hairbrushes and shoes, for example, what we're selling is prescription medicine that gets sent to people's houses where they, with some of them, inject themselves at home. That requires a lot of trust building with the consumer for them to come to that purchase decision with you as a brand. We develop a lot of that trust through the work that we do with athletes, through athletes being the testimonials of what we're doing is safe and works. And so we use it as well to be inspirational for people. Hey, this helped a 35-year-old Cody Miller, who was a two-time Olympic champion when he was in his prime, beat his personal best at 35, and he's feeling healthier and better than he ever has. Use that as inspiration for the consumer at home and develop that trust with the brand. And so these are the core distinct ways that they work together.
Yeah, and just to digress a little bit, a lot of concierge doctors, they'll send you things where you can inject yourself. But the difference to me is they don't have the data that you have. And the interesting thing is the more time that goes by, the more data you have, the more powerful insights you can give to your customers. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also not just that, but also the substance of that data. Because what we're looking at is not just average people on enhancements, but we're looking at some of the most genetically blessed people that are also the most disciplined. And this is actually why we've been able to recruit so many incredible doctors and scientists to our independent medical and scientific commission, because they were so curious about working with these elite athletes in an open, regulated way. So they didn't have to use, unsafe substances, et cetera. But for the first time, we were able to create that environment, to create that data set, which is much more informative than just the same data set on 30 average people.
So back to the games, Max, Maybe describe the games, the events that are in the games. I know it was in Las Vegas. What was the magnitude of that, the viewership? I know you had a lot of sponsors involved. It's such a cool thing. It got so much attention, and my guess is it's only going to get better and better every year that you do it. Maybe just get into the nuts and bolts of exactly what it is.
Yeah. So the first Enhanced Games was in a purpose-built arena.
Yep.
A purpose-built arena that has never been constructed like this before, to showcase 3 sports at the same time.
Yeah.
Track, swimming, and weightlifting. All of these 3 sports we chose because they're very relatable. Everyone can run, swim, and lift weight. But they also all are individual sports with objectively measurable performance. That allowed us to show the performance increase of the athletes through enhancements. All of the events that we had within these sports were also shorter than a minute, so that they would fit perfectly into an Instagram reel or a TikTok.
Yeah.
And so we really built this event already in mind for digital distribution first, particularly on 9 to 16 devices to maximize our reach. The event was 1 day, roughly 6 hours. And overall, it's been 42 athletes, of which, as I said before, 21, roughly half, like personal bests, which is absolutely stellar. The event itself had roughly 2,500 spectators there in person. But as you said as well, the digital reach of it was much bigger. Throughout the live stream and socials, we've engaged more than 1 billion people around the globe, which is, for a first-time sporting event, insane.
Crazy.
And the earned media that we've gotten from it was crazy. Like, we had more than 200 credentialed journalists there.
Yeah.
And since the beginning of the year to the games, we've had 4,000 stories written about us in the press that generated more than 16 billion clicks on those stories. So, like, the Enhanced Games in terms of earned media reach, I think is incomparable to any other first-time sporting event. What was also crazy is that people didn't compare us to other first-time sporting events, but they used as references, things as the Super Bowl and other things like that. So it was amazing.
Right.
4 million people tuned in live, which is like the average for like an NBA game.
Yeah.
But like at a fraction of the marketing that goes behind this and the system around it. So people really, really loved watching it. And I think what was crazy is as well, like the conversation it sparked afterwards.
Yeah.
People were like, some people were loving it, some people were hating it. And that just really fuels the conversation online.
But everybody paid attention.
But everybody did pay attention. And that's where our sponsors were very happy about it, because they got that reach. We've had 3 title sponsors that together with the smaller ones, we get like 32 million in contracted sponsorship value from them, which is also something remarkable for the first games. And
the event space, if you get a great event that people come to every year, that's like a valuable standalone business. But it's actually a customer acquisition engine, I would imagine, in the aftermath of the first games in May. Like, what did you see? What are your expectations over time as this gets built out?
You're absolutely right. It's, once again, like that flywheel that creates attention and awareness and curiosity for people to consider enhancements for themselves. Most of the people that come and are consumers from us now learned about us through the Enhanced Games. When I look as well as in terms of how we advertise our consumer business, we do, and the most measurable is probably paid spend on social media.
Yep.
When I look at regular paid spend ads that are not like athlete-driven versus the ones that are athlete-driven, we have much more efficiencies on the ones that are athlete-led and driven. What we have with our athletes as well is the ability to whitelist their profiles on socials and reach their audiences directly through their profiles, showing as well much higher conversion than just traditional advertising. So it really shows in many different ways. I still think that the aftermath is something that's going to take, like, we will see the benefits of it even in the longer term, especially as we continue in doing this.
Yeah.
Because for many people still, this was the first time they heard about enhancements, learned about it, and are considering even for themselves. But what I also see is if I compare ourselves to other players in the telehealth space, our average order values are like 3 to 4 times of that of some that we consider to be the best in the market. When I think about, some people are signing up with us for 12-month subscriptions in their first-time purchase. And so those are all very, very indicative already that there's definitely a moat that we've been establishing in our telehealth business through what we do in sports.
So the games have been a really powerful tool for Enhanced in their telehealth business. And there's one particular area where Max sees potential for that buzz to translate into significant growth.
So peptides are like popping up left, right, and center. People are talking about them. People are using them.
I know. It's like the hottest thing ever. Yep.
It's like the hottest thing ever. But not many of those peptides are actually approved at the moment.
Yeah.
There's just very few. The ones that are approved, we actually offer.
Yep.
But many others that people are very, very curious about, like particularly in the recovery space, cognitive enhancement space, etc. The regulator noticed that the American people are buying those from untested and unregulated suppliers, where sometimes even what says on the vial is not actually what's in the vial.
Scary, yeah.
It's scary. People are still willing to take that risk because they're hoping for these benefits.
Yep.
So the regulator right now had a couple of weeks ago a hearing within the FDA to vote on whether 7 certain peptides should be moved in advance for rulemaking that they are being moved to category 1, which would mean that they are able to be prescribed and compounded again in the US. 6 of those 7 peptides received a favorable vote. So now what happens next is the FDA needs to come through together with HHS on rulemaking about making that accessible. This would open our doors for offering more therapies safely to consumers, which I think is a massive potential new market that we could capture. Not just because the demand that we're already seeing in the gray market moving to the regulated market, but the one market that I'm actually even more excited about is the people that were smart enough not to buy from the unregulated market and now have a safe pathway to actually become first-time consumers. And so that's why I'm very, very excited about the peptide space and everything that's been happening in regulation recently, because I think it opens many more doors. And particularly when you then think about that particularly peptides are considered more for enhancement and performance optimization, this is really the brand that we have been building, that people are resonating us with. And so I think we're primed for that market.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt you've got a huge secular tailwind behind you on healthy living and people trying to find ways to optimize their health. And anything that's in the news like that has to benefit the company. We kind of took a deep dive, Max, on the games themselves. Maybe go through, you talked about peptides. If I watch the games, I'm like, you know what? I'm X years old. I have these goals. Tell me what my journey is going to your website to becoming a longtime customer.
Yeah. So at the moment, what you can do is we have a current offering of certain therapies. Those range from hormone replacement therapies, which is something like testosterone and clomiphene, I think certain other things that the people can buy, to other substances in the more wellness space. Say, for example, a peptide like sermorelin, which helps you with like recovery, sleep, etc. But then what we're also offering at the moment is GLP-1s as well for people just to manage weight. More focused for us in the microdosing space, for people to just do more appetite regulation rather than doing big obesity changes.
Yeah.
But that's what the offering is currently like. At the moment, it's not as personalized as it's going to be, what we're developing towards to. So that means the consumers can get educated about certain substances and then get checked their eligibility for them for certain substances that will require, depending on which state they're in, a consultation with a doctor. And then a doctor would prescribe it and the substances get sent to people's homes.
And so medical supervision and personalization and all of that, you're going to roll all of that out over the coming years. And really, you're going to be, for lack of a better term, holding people's hands the whole way through the journey, giving them feedback and data and things like that, ideally.
Exactly. So the medical supervision part is already there. Certain therapies require, uploading a recent blood test, doing a recent blood test, etc. But what we're working very hard on right now is that personalized approach where the consumer can just come and start an intake. And what we're thinking about there is, and we're going to hopefully talk more precisely about that as a company going forward, is we're starting with an intake where we understand and get to know the customer. Who are they right now? What are they trying to achieve? Not just like, hey, I want to run a sub 4-hour marathon, but I want to feel like I did when I was 10 years ago coaching my kids' camp. I went through the whole practice, didn't need to sit down once. I was feeling great about myself. And then we try to go down the rabbit hole to really distinct what it was that made a person feel that way, to then come up with a protocol recommendation to get the person from where they are today to that feeling again. And through that, I think, as then people change as they go through life. So for example, where I'm at right now and the protocol that I'm taking right now is different than it was 6 months ago, is different than it was 2 years ago. What we want to create is an intelligence layer that stays with the consumer over time, that educates them, checks in with them, monitors them, all automatically, and then comes up with certain protocol recommendations and changes to those recommendations as the consumer progresses. Because, for example, right now I'm taking testosterone, which has an impact on my fertility. So if I were with my partner to start thinking about having kids, I would want to get off the testosterone, start taking another substance like, for example, HCG, which would help me with fertility increase again. And so being in touch with Enhanced and the system would then monitor what you're going through in life to then analyze it and come up with proactive protocol changes. But they always would have to be reviewed by the clinician and then decided on to make sure that the customer is as well taken care of as they can possibly be.
And it kind of leads to my next question, which is, you're probably going to be compared to HIMSS and Noom and some of those other places. When you think about the company and the competitive landscape and your total addressable market, how do you think about all that together?
So I fully agree with you. It's a very crowded market already. And I think it's just going to be more crowded, particularly with peptide regulations potentially changing. When you think about the underlying substances that we're selling, those are basically the same substances. They get compounded in the US. Same telehealth players buy from the same compounding pharmacies. And basically the substance is, I always say, like 70, 80, 90% the same. Just depends on which fillers you use, etc. So the underlying substance we're selling is a commodity. In any commoditized business, margins are going to compress very quickly. So we've been very, very much thinking about how do we differentiate ourselves in a space where margins are going to be compressing, that's going to be very crowded. So I think there's two ways. One is really the brand and what we stand for as a business and how we can be inspirational for people and showcase through them, through athletes, but also professionals in other professions. Say, for example, artists, celebrities, taking them on journeys and showcasing on the stories that we're telling about them, how enhancements are changing their lives to be that kind of inspirational brand that the people trust. But then the second layer is, it's not just about building that storefront to say like, hey, here's substances A, B, C, D, but like, here's which substances you should take in combination right where you are right now with these certain objectives that you have. So really that personalization approach is, I think, what's going to really differentiate people. And then what we're looking to do is, build this out as a community. People that are getting enhanced are, becoming missionaries. If you do it right, I rarely meet people, actually I have never met someone who's gotten enhanced the right way that said, you should not do this. The people that I meet are like, hey, I got my friends to do this. I got my parents to do this. My parents are enhanced now. My friends are enhanced. Their parents are enhanced. And so like, it's really that networking effect. And so we try to think about it, not just acquiring customers through paid spend on socials, but other ways of exciting and being real for people. Because if we wanted to go down just the marketing route on the paid side, we'd be competing with HIMSS. HIMSS went out with their numbers, earlier this week. They spent more than $250 million this quarter on marketing alone. And so
insane.
We need differentiated ways to position us in the market. And I think we have very, very good ones.
What do you think the total addressable market is for this? Because you're kind of a category of one. Some people could see you rightfully or wrongfully as kind of a sports company or a healthcare company or like a hybrid of the two. I think because you're a category of one, I would imagine the market is a little bit bigger for you than maybe some of the others.
I think, there's a cool way to think about it. I think on the sporting side, I think it's a very interesting sports IP that we have. And if you think about just societal changes, right? People are on stages every week talking about, in 10 years from now, we won't have any jobs anymore. We don't need to work. So what does that mean? Assume for now that's real, it's going to come true. What does that mean? People will have more time on their hands. What do they want to do with that? Things that AI and Gen AI cannot replicate. These are either A, social, or B, entertainment. So I want to be in my community and I want to get entertained. I want live entertainment. Entertained that can be by an AI movie, but I'm looking for live entertainment. And how do I enjoy both social and live entertainment more by being in a physiology that puts my body in a position to just get the most out of it? And we actually play in both of those areas. One is through the sporting offering of the events calendar that we do throughout the year for people to have live entertainment and sports in a community that they can enjoy. But then really also providing the certain services for people to take better care of their bodies so they can enjoy life to the fullest. And so we're actually massively playing into this consequence of AI space that's really going to be out there. So I think from sports, within sports and entertainment, I think our IP is really interesting. Because of, I think, one rivalry that can become one of the best rivalries of all time, natural versus enhanced. And that I think is something that we will not see many others entering that market into. It's extremely hard to convince athletes to do this with you. For us, getting athletes for the first games was very difficult. It's changed now a lot because we've built so much trust and credibility within the athlete community that, Olympic gold medalists are in my DMs, world record holders are in my DMs on Instagram. But then on the consumer side, I think the TAM is really big. I think for people as they become, the societal developments, younger generations are drinking less or smoking less. People in their 40s are thinking about how can I make the next decade of my life better than the last. People are more proactive about it. People are more educated because of the access to information that we now have. And so I think enhancements can be relevant for anyone at a certain stage in their life. What I'm not advocating for is that everyone should be as much enhanced as they can always be.
Yeah.
I'm actually an advocate of taking what you specifically need at a certain point in time to get you to where you want to be, and then reassess whether you should change the protocol. And so that I think can be relevant for anyone. Fun fact, a group of people that is very much enhanced is orchestra musicians.
You're kidding.
Yeah, now what do they take? Obviously not anabolic steroids, but they're taking beta blockers to help them with stage fright.
Oh, interesting.
And so enhancement can come through life in so many different ways. One area that I'm particularly excited about is cognitive enhancement as well.
Yeah, that is super interesting.
So I think there's so many ways how this is relevant for anyone, depending on who they are specifically and what their objectives are in life.
Yeah, it's interesting, Max, because, when some people heard about the games initially and the word enhanced, there might have been a controversial connotation to that word. The more I hear you talk, the more positive that word seems to me. And, I think like every person at every single level, like, why wouldn't you want to be enhanced? It's such a great name. And I think the fact that maybe it could be misunderstood by some people, it's not the worst thing in the world because people are writing about it. Like we talked about earlier, it's all over social media and it draws people in to hear you actually say it firsthand. And then the light bulb goes off. They're like, wow, I get it.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. And there's still more education to be done. It's not about, steroids in locker rooms and everyone looking
exactly,
like a bodybuilder.
Right?
It's about looking and feeling the best you can.
I love it. One last question for you. I always think like companies can only do 2 or 3 things a year like really well. What are you excited about when you look out over the next 12 to 18 months that you're working on that you think really could be a game changer for the company that people should pay attention to?
Yeah, I think the biggest game changer is going to be when we're ready with a personalized approach and taking care of people over time and becoming really the guiding hand that takes them on their health journey as they progress through life. Working very hard on that I think is massive for us. And then I think the second biggest thing is just expanding the sporting and content calendar. But what I'm really excited about is going beyond elite athletes. What we found with elite athletes is that very exciting, but not very relatable. So I want to become more relatable for the everyday person out there so that the, teacher in Idaho is not just watching the sports, but thinking about what can enhancements do for me in my life.
That was Max Martin, the co-founder and CEO of Enhanced. The company is an elite sports competition and performance products company featuring the Enhanced Games, an international athletic competition that embraces medically supervised, that's an important term, science. Enhanced is also a consumer platform which offers proprietary supplement stacks, telehealth services, prescription longevity therapies, and peptides, among other life-changing products. And as we've heard here today, each side of the business really complements the other, creating a flywheel effect for future growth. It's a huge addressable market. I'm Tom Ryan. We'll see you next time back in the arena.
References to specific stocks are not intended to be recommendations for specific trading behavior. Comments presented on this podcast are intended for informational and educational purposes only, and do not represent opinions or recommendations on whether to buy, sell, or hold shares of a particular stock. All investors are advised to conduct their own independent research into individual stocks before making a trading decision. In addition, investors are advised that past stock performance is no guarantee of future price performance.